Hello, everyone. This is Phoenix Jean, and I'm starting a new series or a series, and it's called Marriage is a Scam. And part one is the etymology of the meaning of husband. So we're going to dive right into it. It's very interesting knowing the definition of things, actually, the etymology of it, knowing the definition from maybe the dictionary is not going to really delve deep. But if you pull the words apart, um, and really get into the specifics of what it meant back in the day historically, you really get the definition of how it started out. So this article is by Karel Donk, and it's the true meaning of the word husband. So Karel says, after looking at the true meaning of the words, I'm going to say relation, and family, it is now time to look at the true meaning of the word husband. And as you can no doubt see, coming from miles away, the word husband does not mean what most people think it means. Got a photo here or painting here of Adam tilling the ground. And by the way, Adam is not a person. Adam is man in general. Men, I believe. And Eve with her two children. And it says, according to Google, the word husband means a married man considered in relation to his spouse. But if we look at the etymology of the word husband, we find that it originally had a completely different meaning. The word husband is a combination of two words, namely hus and ban. Hus means which is an old English word meaning house, dwelling, shelter, and ban, which means bind, fasten, confine, chain. The word ban is a variant of the Middle English word bond, which also had the meaning slave, serf, unfree, dweller. Taken together, we see that the word husband actually means fastened, combined, or chained to a house. Quite literally, a house slave. Coincidentally, or not coincidentally, this is exactly what happens when a man ties himself to a single woman through marriage. He becomes severely limited and confined to his household, a slave having to work hard to provide for his family. And remember, the word family means the slaves in a household. That's the other part two that I'm going to go into another time. This has also been legislated in recent times by the criminal state, and in most Western societies, the man literally has to work like a slave, involuntary servitude, even after divorce through alimony. Compare this to the following: husband from Middle English, husband, husbande, from Old English, husbanda, usbanda, male of a household, householder, master of a house. Probably from Old Norse, husbandi, master of house, from us, house, and bandi, dweller, householder. Equivalent to house plus bond, serf, slave, originally dweller. In most societies, going back to very ancient times, all the way back to the Sumerians, in fact, the man was considered to be the master of the house, the head of the family, or lord of the house. So it's easy to understand why the word husband, even though it literally means house slave, would also be associated with the meaning master of a house. The man is himself a slave, but within the group of slaves known as the family, he is the lord or master, having authority over and ownership of the family. Consider that in ancient Mesopotamia, the words describing a husband meant owner of a wife. From Israel's house, reflections on the use of Bit Israel in the Old Testament in the light of its ancient Near Eastern environment by Daniel I. Block. In the patriarchy, in the patriarchal Mesopotamian society, the father was considered to be the lord of the house. The Code of Hammurabi, where he is also called Be'el Asatim, owner of a wife. Asatim, owner of a wife. Yes, in ancient Mesopotamia, marriage was equivalent to slavery as it still is today. Around 400 AD, Jerome Stridon, a priest recognized as a saint by the Catholic Church, actually referred to marriage as the bondage of wedlock. It's also interesting to note that the word bond is said to have been derived from the Old Norse bondi, which means farmer, tiller of soil. Bond, in a state of a serf, unfree from bond, tenant farmer holding land under a lord in return for customary service. A married bond as head of a household. The Old English form of bunda, husbandman, householder, but the Middle English word probably is from Norse banda, a contraction of buandi, occupier and tiller of soil, peasant, husbandman, a noun from the past participle of boa, to dwell. The word bond also means associated with the meaning farmer, occupier, and tiller of soil. Makes a lot of sense when we consider the fact that man was originally created specifically to serve the gods, i.e., be the gods' slaves, by working on their land. Like I mentioned in my post, Relational Suppression and Repression 1, Definition and Origin. That's another article. We're also told in chapter 2 of the book of Genesis that when Yahweh created humans, they did so because there was no man, Adam, to work the ground. Man, Adam, to work the ground. And in Genesis 2:15, we read that the Lord Yahweh, God, Elohim, took the man, Adam, and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and watch over it. So we see that humans were created by these gods specifically to work for them and serve them as slaves on their land. This is backed by Zechariah Stitchin in his book, The 12th Planet. The very terms by which the Sumerians and Akkadians called man bespoke his status and purpose. He was a Lulu, primitive, a Lulu Amilu, primitive worker, an Awihim, laborer. That man was created to be a servant of the gods, did not strike the ancient peoples as a particular ideal at all. In biblical times, the deity was Lord, sovereign, king, ruler, master. The term that is commonly translated as worship was in fact avod, work. Ancient and biblical man did not worship his God. He worked for him. No sooner had the biblical deity, like the gods in Sumerian accounts, created man, than he planted a garden and assigned man to work there. And the Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to till it and to tend it. So the man being a husbandman, which is associated with the meaning occupier and tiller of soil, completely makes sense given the background. We also see that the word bond being associated with the meaning slave, serf, unfree, dweller, and farmer, occupier, and tiller of soil completely makes sense given the background. The biblical Adam were the first, the biblical Adam is plural. Adam is plural. The biblical Adam were the first husbandmen, which were men confined, banned to their dwelling, hus, in this case, the Garden of Eden, tilling the land like slaves while simultaneously being the heads, lords of their families. The Garden of Eden was a freaking slave plantation, not paradise. Becoming or being a husband, just like having or being a part of a family, is nothing to be proud of. Nothing, no, not only does it mean that you yourself are a slave, but you're also an oppressor to the slaves within your household, i.e., your family. And that's the end of this article. Now that was a lot, a mouthful, but now we know the history of husband. In part two, I'm going to go over the etymology or the history of family. Stay tuned. Thank you. This is Phoenix Jean.